Hello everyone, it is the FPS tester here and welcome to my first ever RTX 5090 benchmark. That's right, I have the 5090. I ordered it a couple of days ago. It arrived 2 days ago and then I had to wait for the power supply to arrive and my brand new 4K monitor. So yeah, there's a lot that's changed very recently and this is going to be the second time that I'm actually booting up 7 Days to Die with this GPU. We're going to be testing out its performance at 4K, probably 1440p, and I doubt we'll be checking out 1080p today, but you know, we never know. So for those of you that are curious, I have installed the latest NVIDIA drivers for this. I had to do tons of updates and just like do a whole bunch of stuff basically. And of course I had to actually fit in my new power supply and fit in the 5090. Yeah, now I'm just gonna want to play and actually test some games out with it. So here we go. We're gonna be playing 7 Days to Die. So we're gonna start off with the display, of course, 4K resolution. So it's been so long that I've been playing at 1440p. We're gonna use DLSS at native AA, so DLAA. We're gonna go in these, it says custom settings, but this is maximum settings. I'm leaving the AA is obviously turned off because we've got DLAA turned on. Yeah, everything else is maxed out. I didn't see particles was off. We're gonna leave motion blur off. That's the only thing I'm leaving off for obvious reasons, though I will say that motion blur is actually quite nice. It's quite cinematic if you don't mind it. If you're not making content and you like the motion blur, it's quite nice, believe it or not. UI doesn't matter, but I'll show you anyways. I'm using 80% UI size. And this is important as well. I've got mesh distance set to 2000, which is the most demanding. Basically means that we can see buildings and stuff further away. Dynamic mesh is turned off still. I have never had this on, and honestly, I don't think it really matters. So we're just going to leave it off. And we're going to jump into the game. I've just rendered a new world so that we can test it out. And we're gonna go ahead and see the performance of 7 Days to Die, more so than the 5090, I would say, because I have a funny feeling that it's going to be 7 Days to Die that is what we're testing here in terms of like how stable is it. All right, so it's loaded. We're going to be jumping in, and I'm just going to reset my 1% lows. I'm going to put on creative mode and debug mode so that we can fly and do some other things. God mode, there we go. So fresh out of the gate, 4K. Need to remember to say 4K, not 1440. So fresh out of the gate at 4K resolution, already a stutter. Have the game installed on a Gen 4 NVMe, I believe it is. I can't remember, but it's on an SSD as well, for those of you that are wondering about the stuttering. And I am, of course, pairing it up with the Ryzen 7 7800X 3D, which, while it's not the quickest gaming CPU in the world these days, and some of you will be saying, you know, I should have the 9800. This is still, like, the difference is not much between these two CPUs, to be honest with you. We are completely GPU bound in the forest, as you would expect, and we're at 120 frames, which for 7 Days to Die is absolutely amazing, to be honest with you. But I know there's some of you that are going to be screaming, go check out the cities. That's what we're going to be doing. But what tends to be the case these days is the open world kind of forest areas and anywhere outside of like big cities are much more graphically demanding these days because of all the shadows on the trees and stuff, it would seem, and all the grass perhaps. And then the cities themselves are considerably more CPU intensive, as you can imagine. You can see that we're already dropping GPU utilization. That's going to happen a lot in this game just because of how 7 Days to Die is basically the engine that it runs on. So we're going to go ahead and TP to a wasteland, and the only way that I know how to do this now is to actually come here and well, this is how you always have done it, to be honest with you. So we're going to go to Sky Scraper. We're going to go to this one, and hopefully it's enough wasteland. It is, because this is typically the most intensive biome, and you can actually see it's a pretty stuttery mess already. I do have feral sense turned on, so there are going to be zombies running at us from quite a far distance, to be honest with you. This is not the largest POI that you can be at. There is a bigger one somewhere. But yeah, you can see, even with something like the Ryzen 7 7800X 3D, you're going to be CPU bound a lot of the time in 7 days. Just at around the 80 FPS range. Now, one of the main reasons why I'm benchmarking 7 Days to Die first is because it's one of the games that I have played a lot of time on. So I think I would say that I know quite a lot about the game. I've played it ever since it came out, like over a decade ago. I have been pretty well in tune with the performance of the game and how it runs, and you know what's more intensive, what's less intensive, for a number of years now. So, and the fact that there's really not that many videos out there with showing the performance of 7 Days to Die in general, let alone with high-end GPUs. So you can kind of see what you're in for if you're going to get one, basically, you know, because it's not just this magic bandage fix for 7 Days to Die. It still has some stuttering issues. Now, you can see as I'm running around, I'm GPU bound sometimes, but then quite often the case is it is dropping GPU utilization every now and then. My god, it's actually scary how many watts this GPU pulls. Holy Jesus. It's like nearly double my, it's actually more than double what my 3060 Ti would pull, which is absolutely insane. But, yeah, if you're wondering, by the way, is it worth going from 1440 or 1080 to 4K? I'm using a 27-inch monitor here at 4K. The reason being is my desk, I can't push my monitor any further back. So if I got a 32-inch 4K monitor, for example, I would probably have to upgrade my desk. I would have to buy a new desk as well. And it's already expensive enough, you know, having to order a new power supply to use the 5090 and order, you know, the other things that you need for it. And yeah, so it's already expensive enough, basically, to use a 5090 or to upgrade to it. So I don't want to have to buy another desk as well, even though it would not be that expensive. So at 27 inches, you can definitely see the difference between 1440p and 4K, even at 27 inches. If you sit relatively close, like I do, I sit around 23 to 27 inches away from my monitor, which some would consider way too close. But I've always played like this, so I'm pretty used to it. And you can definitely see it's sharper. You can definitely see it does look better. Is it worth the quality difference? I'm not sure, honestly. I'm still not decided. I've only been using the 4K monitor now for like literally an hour or two. I've not been using it that long, so... and of course, it depends on the quality of monitor that you've got. I know we're here to benchmark the 5090, but I still want to talk about some of the things what I'm using here. So we're going to go inside this building. I'm actually going to give myself the dev gun. Let's just search dev. I think it's this one. I can't remember. And we are just going to... We're going to get rid of some of these on this. Yeah. We are in feral mode, just because, basically. Let's just get rid of some of these. There we go. And I actually want to get a helmet. We're just going to put a light on it. We're just going to get any hat, and we're going to put a mod on here. Modify. There we go. Let's go ahead and wear this. There it is. This is what most people are going to be running. And I'm doing this for the reflections and stuff, because, yeah, most people are going to run around with a flashlight helmet mod, right? Or a light helmet mod, whatever it's called. And so inside this POI, which is one of the more intensive ones, not the most intensive, I don't believe, these days. Yeah, we are CPU bound, guys. Actually CPU bound. At around 80 to 90 frames, which is more than enough for 7 days. More than enough for 7 days to die. And if you don't think this is impressive, it absolutely is impressive, because... we're using maxed out shadows, which you don't really need, but I'm using maxed out shadows. So, and I do want to also mention that I am recording this without a capture card today. I've not hooked up my capture card to my 5090 yet, so this is recording using the NVENC chip on the 5090 as well, which will impact performance to a degree, because I wanted to test out AV1 encoding. Since I've never used it. I've never had a GPU that could use AV1. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, the 40 series cards and the 50 series cards and some other GPUs as well can use AV1, which is like the best encoder for content creators, basically. and it's becoming more accessible, basically. So you're going to be able to use it for your live streams and stuff like that in more places, and it just produces the best picture quality for the smallest file sizes. So I wanted to test it out since I have it. So we're testing that as well here, kind of, at least for me. So do bear in mind that the performance of the GPU may be slightly lower because of it, but typically NVENC is pretty, or the NVENC chip on these GPUs, on the 40 series and 50 series, is very optimized, very good, basically. But there always will be a performance hit. So yeah, inside of here though, we are CPU bound a lot of the time at around 60 frames right now, which is still playable for 7 days, still playable. And I know there's going to be people saying this game is terrible, it runs really bad. Like, you've got a 5090, almost the best PC you could possibly build right now in 2025, close to it, you know, in terms of the CPU and GPU, and you're only getting 60 frames. It's native 4K, you know, with all of the settings absolutely cranked out to the max. And I believe DLAA in this game actually gives you slightly less performance than just using TAA. So there is that as well. So what we're going to do, just for curiosity, is we're going to go ahead and turn the shadows completely off. Oh, not yeah, we're going to turn the shadows completely off, and we're going to see like how this changes the performance. I'm just going to quickly restart the recording. So turning shadows off, we immediately get a massive boost all the way up to 140 frames on average, which is insane. 150 on average, actually. And the game is a whole lot brighter, so if you're somebody that hates how dark the game is, then yeah, turning shadows off is the way to go. I will say the visual quality is obviously decreased quite a bit, and the reason why I turned shadows off just for this little test is because it's very CPU intensive as well. You can see we're completely GPU bound all the time now, and we technically turn the graphics down, right? We turn the shadows off, but those are CPU intensive. And that's what will hold your CPU back a lot of the time in this game, from what I've found in all my testing. If you're CPU bound in 7 days, turn the shadows off. Probably one of the easiest solutions for you. And just get used to how the game looks. If you like the game being beautiful, you're going to have to get a better CPU. It's really that simple, guys, for 7 days to die. So yeah, if you want your CPU to have, you want to get a bit more performance out of your CPU, turn those shadows off. Don't know why I'm struggling with my words today. I think it's a bit because I'm a bit tired, right? I went out, I've been to the dentist, I've done some traveling, and it was very stressful. You know, installing the 5090 was incredibly stressful. I was very stressed doing it, just because of how expensive everything is, right? I was like really shitting bricks to like not sugarcoat it. So yeah, let's go ahead and do this. Right, so yeah, if you want better performance, turn those shadows off. We're going to go ahead and turn the shadows back up to max, and we're going to try on some DLSS. DLSS is a bit buggy right now. DLSS is a little bit buggy at the moment, but we're going to try some at ultra quality. I'm going to reset my recording so I know where to cut in post, much easier for me. So yeah, I've turned the DLSS on to ultra quality, and somehow we're getting less frames right now. I don't know what's happening. We dropped down into the, I have no idea. We didn't get anything out of it, out of that, because of course we're CPU bound because of the shadows. So because of the shadows, it doesn't matter that we've turned DLSS to ultra quality rather than DLAA, simply because we're CPU bound. So we'll turn the shadows back off again, and we'll see what extra performance we can get out of the game. It's actually insane that I have to even turn shadows off with this setup, to be completely honest. Like, it's actually nuts that I even have to contemplate turning shadows off. My god, it's okay. 7 days to die. By the way, I'm not trying to bash on 7 days right now. I love this game. I hope it gets better. I hope that the devs kind of take the feedback of what the community is saying, because it is getting a little bit like, hey, we want you to play this way, and you don't really have the freedom anymore. But they are reverting some of those changes. But I hope that it doesn't seem like I'm bashing the game, because it is probably one of my favorite games ever. But it does suck that when you've got a PC that is this high end, to not be able to use all ultra is kind of annoying. It's kind of annoying, just because the shadows are so CPU intensive. But, you know, they have done a great job optimizing it. I will say that. They have optimized this game amazingly. If you've been playing this game as long as I have, trust me, I got very accustomed to playing 7 Days to Die on the lowest settings possible at 1080p with 20-something FPS for literally years. So, they've come a long way, basically, to allowing us to get up to 160 frames here. Yes, PCs have come a long way too, but, you know, still. So actually turning on the DLSS at ultra quality though, to get back on track, didn't actually boost our FPS really. Even with the shadows turned off, we're still at about 150. It does jump up sometimes to 200 frames. So it does seem like if I'm not going to be CPU bound, we actually have gained about 30 to 40, maybe close to 50 FPS, which is absolutely insane. The game still looks great. Ultra quality DLSS at 4K is fantastic. You know, you can oftentimes drop all the way down to performance, which is technically 1080p. And it still looks better than native 1080p. And it still looks really good, basically, is what I'm trying to say. It still looks great. So, yeah. But because we are CPU bound, I'm not really getting any frame rate realistically. Like, if I stand still, we get, like, 40 more FPS. But who's doing that? Maybe on a hard night, that's useful. When you're just stood in your horde base. But horde bases, if you build them in the right biomes and stuff, aren't as intensive as this. So, yeah. Zombies aren't really that intensive these days. Which is what was the case before. So we're going to turn the shadows back up. Let's see here. We'll turn the shadows to maximum. And we'll turn the... what's it called again? The DLSS back to DLAA, back to native. So yeah, let's try this out. 1440p at... maximum settings in the game possible. How does this one run? How does it run, guys? Out of pure curiosity. Yeah, we're at 60 FPS, 70 FPS. Still a CPU bound situation here. Not great. Not great in the wasteland. And no, I'm not going to be testing the Horde Night because, like I said, Horde Nights have come a long way. They're not as intensive as going inside these big POIs, for example, these days. They used to be more intensive or on par with the performance, but these days the zombies just aren't intensive. They're not really that intensive. It's on Horde Night. It's mostly just the shadows and stuff in the POIs that are. But I'm curious. Have I got my shadows? Yeah, my shadows are on right now. We'll go ahead and turn them off. So we'll turn shadows off and we'll just see if it's possible. Yeah, we're not CPU bound. Oh, no, wait. No, we are CPU bound. But we're getting 200 and something frames, which is not needed for 7 Days to Die. You don't need 200 frames. Yeah, if you require 200 frames in 7 Days to Die, you're a madman. You don't need that in this game. It feels super smooth. Probably some of the smoothest gameplay I've ever seen in 7 Days. But quality-wise, it has taken a hit. I'm just going to go turn the shadows back on. Let's do that. We're going to change biome. We're going to go back to the forest. So yeah, in the wasteland, which is like endgame basically, you can expect around 60 to 100 frames, I guess. It depends a lot. You can see the frame time graph there. It's not perfectly smooth, and there is some FPS drops which I can feel. But for the most part, those small ones there, like you can see, you don't really feel them that much. I felt that one. So yeah, but that will be, a lot of that can be fixed with FPS caps, essentially. If you don't have your FPS too high, sorry, then yeah, that can be resolved with that. But yeah, you can see once you come into these POIs, if you plan on coming in here with like maximum settings, you're gonna be CPU bound at around 60 FPS actually, if you've got this CPU. And the 9800X will probably get around 65 to maybe like at a reach 70 FPS, probably like 65 frames. It's really not that much quicker than this CPU. So, let's go ahead and change biome though. I don't know who's going to be playing at 1440p with a 5090, but you know, I'm sure there's some mad guy out there, like, or mad lad that likes to play at 240 Hz normally, super competitive, and has a 5090. Actually, there are streamers out there who have 5090s at 1440p who play 1440p, but I guess they have tons of money. They are streamers. Let's see, trader. Let's go to Trader Bob. I think he's not the first trader. I forget which trader's first. Isn't it Trader Joel? Is it Trader Rect? I think it's Trader Rect, actually. I haven't played this for a few weeks, but I think it's Trader Rect who is... It even says which biome they're in, actually. But yeah, it's Trader Rect. So we're back here in the forest. Yeah, even in the forest, we're only going to get 140, 150 frames. We're not going to be GPU bound here either. We're still CPU bound even in the forest at 1440p. 170 frames, 180. It's going to fluctuate like hell basically in 7 days to die. It's pretty hard to benchmark this game because all the locations are quite different. And with it being random gen, if you play random gen, no two worlds are going to be the same. So it's hard to give you like here's the performance you can get. It's like, this is the kind of performance you can get basically on average. But yeah, I just got a massive FPS drop there. You can see that the 1% lows are pretty dreadful because of that massive spike we just got. It dropped all the way down to 20 something, which did feel pretty horrific. But like I said, FPS cap. Set an FPS cap and it'll be much more stable, essentially. I'm actually going to do that now. Set target FPS. I think 75. 75 should be fine for 7 days. I've played at 75 frames for a long time in this game. So we'll set the frame rate to 75 capped. I'm going to stick it to 1440p right now because 4K will get the same FPS anyways. And we're just going to run around and we're going to see how stable that frame time graph is, just doing stuff. I'm sure we'll still get a few spikes, but we'll see how low the 1% lows go. Because sometimes people say like, oh my god, this game is terrible because the 1% lows are just like absolute dog shit, you know, in benchmarks. But the thing you've got to remember is benchmarkers are running the GPU at absolute max, which means the CPU is having to like push way harder than it needs to. There's really no need to have your frame rate above your monitor's refresh rate unless you're a competitive player, which you can still get a slight advantage if you have a higher frame rate, but it is diminishing returns at that point. But for a game like 7 Days to Die, you don't need to be pushing more than what your monitor can actually like display, because it makes literally no difference for you. But yeah, I'm trying to like go inside some POIs and stuff to see if there's any spikes. Let's do that. Let's come in here. Let's go through here. So yeah, you can see here setting an FPS cap. So I'm trying to let my accent not come through too much. Setting an FPS cap. There we go. Resolved a lot of the stuttering issues, which is going to happen if you actually set an FPS cap, which you should always set an FPS cap in your games. Yeah, there's no stuttering anymore, really. 1% lows being at 54, I can live with that, you know. I can live with that. Let's go ahead and throw it back onto 4K with the shadows are actually on. Let's go ahead and shove it back up to 4K. Native 4K. Maximum settings. Just for one final little run around. And yeah, the game looks super crisp. Super crisp. The graphics are just like so sharp. It is pretty nuts. Yeah, it's pretty nuts. 1% lows are bad because I just went into the menu. They always drop down to 1 FPS if you go in the menu. But yeah, you can see the 1% lows are still again at 4K around that 50 something FPS mark. Yeah, it's really not a bad experience, guys, if you do set that FPS cap. We're actually going to go back to we'll go back to the wasteland. Go back to the skies. Can I not spell? Oh, it's one word. Absolute moron. Anyways, so let's go. Let's go to the Zillion Tower. Right, and I'm going to reset my 1% lows just when that one goes. There we go. So we're in the wasteland. Most intensive biome technically on the CPU. With an FPS cap of 75. Ultra settings 1440. I'm watching, by the way, if you're wondering where I'm looking, I'm watching my FPS stats. It's like, funny enough, it's exactly where you are right now. I just put my camera on top of my monitor and just left it at that. And it turns out that, why am I getting poisoned or radiated? I don't have God mode on apparently. What the hell? I must have misclicked and turned God mode off. But let's go ahead and do that again because I opened the menu. Yeah, I did open the menu, I had to think. Let's just kill some of these. Yeah, the 1% lows in here are not as good. We're at 40 something. By the way, I did lose my train of thought if you're wondering why I stopped talking about whatever I was talking about. So, yeah, we're still CPU bound. Obviously, because I set the FPS cap at 75. Boop. So I think what I would say is if you're going to play 7 Days to Die, considering... Right, I'm going to pause it real quick. So what I would say is, considering that you have got to turn the shadows off to get good frame rate in 7 Days to Die, or at least set them lower. I'll do it here. Watch, I'll show you real quick. I would personally not go above medium on these two settings because it still looks almost identical and it's less intensive. So if I set target FPS 250. So now I've let my FPS go unlimited. And you can see playing at medium shadows is almost the same. I can barely tell a difference. Mostly what it does is it makes it so that items further away don't have shadows, but also the shadows aren't as long. So it's a shadow distance, I believe it is. The game runs slightly better, you know. It absolutely does. Went from that 60 something to like 70 something. So if you are wanting to get that 70 something FPS range in like large POIs, then that is an option. I would never ever suggest that you actually play with the shadows on maximum. Even medium is kind of pushing it. You can get away with low, and most things look the same or look very similar. But yeah, the point that I was going to make is, if 7 Days to Die is your main game and you're looking for a GPU upgrade and you're considering the 5090 and you're wanting to play maybe 4K like I am here, then I would say instead go for something like the RX 9070 XT, as that is a fraction of the price. And yes, it doesn't have as much performance as the 5090 and certainly doesn't have nowhere near as much VRAM. Chances are you're going to be CPU bound anyways, so you might as well just turn the settings to medium or low on the shadows. And by the way, some of these settings in here are so minute, from like medium or high to the absolute maximum. It's pretty crazy. Like, for example, reflection quality, you can have that on high or just ultra and it looks great still. You can have the SS reflections on high or even medium and they still look great. So you will still be able to play 7 Days to Die at 4K with a card like that, which is about £600, £700, and in currency, that's about $750 maybe. I don't know. In America, the GPUs are usually the same like price in the UK, so like $600, $700 for a £600 to £700 GPU. That's just how it works. It's more expensive over here to get GPUs and PC parts in general. So yeah, you can probably pick that up over in America for like $600, $700 as well, which is wild to think because that's like so much cheaper than here. But anyways, yeah, something like that will do you just fine for 7 Days to Die, guys. It really will. And if you are looking, you know, to actually have your GPU be fully utilized more often, you are going to have shadows turned off completely anyways. And some people might prefer this look. So yeah, that's my recommendation. A 5090 is kind of... It's not useless in 7 Days to Die. It's just that you're going to be so CPU bound most likely a lot of the time. Especially if you've got other things going on your computer. You know, if you're not just basically having OBS open like I have right now to record and having literally the game open, that's it. You know, you're probably someone that's going to have browser tabs open, Discord's going to be open, God knows what else you're going to have open, other apps and stuff. Like, you're a human being, you're going to have other stuff running on your computer, chances are. So they're gonna take some CPU performance. So yeah, anyways, this video is probably getting very long. That's my benchmark of the 5090 in 7 Days to Die at 4K and 1440p. It's totally fine, as you can imagine. But I say it's totally fine in quotations. Still, you're going to be CPU bound, guys. It's just the nature of 7 Days. Hopefully they make it more optimized. Even more for the CPU. It's pretty challenging, though, for them to do that because of the engine. But we wouldn't have the game that we have without it. So yeah, I'm not complaining. I'll see you in the next benchmark, guys. Let me know what you thought about this video, and do show me some support if you want to see more of these benchmarks. It really helps the channel. I'm gonna leave the game now. Take care, everybody.